and welcome to Noble Character Crafts. My name is Amy and I'm coming to you from eastern Nebraska, where I live with my husband and our 5 children. Today is Friday, October 10th, 2025. A huge welcome to any new or returning viewers. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you really enjoyed this episode. This is a channel all about my crafty life, and today I have knitting and crocheting to share with you all. I will have links to the places that you can find me in the description box below, as well as the show notes for this episode. I have a few finished objects to share with you all today, but first I should share what I'm wearing. I am wearing a hand knitted summer tee, which is named Verbena. It is a pattern by Melissa LaBarre, and I knit this last summer using some yarn that was gifted to me by a viewer of this channel in the line from I Love This Cotton, and the colorway is Sprinkle Me This. I don't really remember too many details about how it went knitting this. I will try to link to the episode where I shared this as a finished object in the description box below if you would like to find out more about the process that I went through in knitting this top. I have finished a few things, and probably the one I'm most excited about is the Florentines blanket that I have been working on for a little while. Really, for a good sized blanket, it hasn't taken me too terribly long to make it. I started it on August 12th and finished it on October 4th. This is a fairly new design released by Sandra of Cherry Heart. And I just really enjoyed making this blanket from start to finish. It was such a fun design to crochet. I used a 4mm hook, and all of the yarn that I used is fingering weight yarn, and I held it double throughout. Sometimes I held the same colorway together with itself, and sometimes for the middle motifs and for the joining yarn here, I held 2 colorways together and marled them, although every time I did that, I tried to make sure that the 2 colors I was holding together were pretty closely matched. So there's not a huge marling per se, it's just 2 colorways that really blend well together to kind of make a new colorway. So the original pattern calls for you to make a total of 24 squares. I doubled mine because I wanted mine to be more of a throw size. I'm going to be keeping this throw for our family. And so I made mine 48 squares big, which laid out was 6 by 8 squares. And all of my squares are also bordered in some bare yarn. So in previous episodes, I have shared all of the different squares that I have made, but I was just so excited to get them all laid out and, put together into a, I wanted the colors spread out so that, it looked nice, and that was a fun process for me. Then the joining yarn that I used was, actually, I might have those. Yes, I have little scraps of those. One's right here and one's back on my desk behind me, so I'll go grab that really quickly. I just remembered that last time I recorded, I had shared with you 3 colorways that I was planning on using for the joining. I ended up only needing to use 2 colorways, and then I didn't have, so I thought that I was going to need a total of 300 grams to do the joining section. So you make the squares, and then you do this border around each square and then join to the next square as you are crocheting along. So it's a join as you go type of method. And according to the yarn requirements given and the fact that I was doubling the size of the blanket, I thought I was going to need around 300 grams to do the joining, but I just measured how much it took me to go around 1 square, and it only took, I think, 2 grams of yarn to go around 1 square. And so I figured I had enough if I just held 2 of my 3 colors together instead of using that 3rd color which was great because I thought it was going to be a little bit tricky to try to evenly distribute those 3 different colorways, marling them all together and to make it look cohesive. So I was super happy that I could just use 2 colors and just have it completely matching throughout for all of the joining. So the 2 colors that I used were these. This skein was gifted to me by a viewer of this channel, but it had no label, so I don't know what it was, but anyway, it's a beautiful, like a seafoam green color, I would say. And this yarn was also gifted to me by a viewer of this channel, Adriana, and she used to dye yarn under her business String to Stitches yarns, and that's what this is. So I've had this in my stash for a long time, so I was super happy to get to use it. It is a fingering weight, superwash merino nylon, 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon blend in the Found Sea Glass colorway. So that is a super beautiful colorway as well. And I love how they worked up together for the joining color. And I really like that idea of using a contrast color for the joining. I don't think that I have ever done that before. I've done join as you go methods before a lot of times with crochet, but I really like the idea of having this neutral background on the squares and then having the joining round be a new fun pop of color. So I really like that, and I think that the color, the blend of those 2 colors together makes just a nice, I like how it blends with all the other colors. There is one square that is pretty matching, but it's still got a bit of a contrast from that joining color. So I think it works really well with all of these colors. I think that joining color just worked great. I was really happy with how that worked out. Okay, so for the joining color, I used a total of 179 grams. So I was fine to use just those 200 grams. Now I used up a lot more of this one. I did weigh them before. Here, I've got this here. Yes, so this colorway weighed 116 grams, and I ended up using 101 of the skein. And then this skein from String to Stitches weighed 107 grams originally, and then I used 78 grams of this one. So this one used up a lot more grams than this one, but it worked out anyway, so it's great. Then for the border, I used some yarn that I dyed myself several years ago. I had 3 skeins of this colorway in my stash, and I again only ended up using 2 of them. The border color took a total of 177 grams. And I again thought I was going to need 3 skeins for the border, but I didn't. The border has, now I can't remember, I think 3 total rounds. Oh, I have the pattern right here. I could look at it. For the border color, yes, there are 3 rounds that you crochet using the border color. And the first 2 are just double crochet stitches, US terms. And then the final round has these fun baubles, which I have never crocheted anything like this before. It was so fun. A little, you know, it was a little time consuming to do all these little baubles, but I just found it so fun to make them. They are so cute, and I think it's just such a fun addition to have on the edge of this blanket. You can just see how cute they are. They're so sweet. Here, I'll hold it up from the bottom so you can kind of see how they dangle. They're so adorable. I just love them. I think it would be fun to add that bobbly stitch to other blankets or shawls, or I thought even making like a garland and using that bobble stitch would be so fun. It's so cute. I really love that stitch. Aren't they sweet? Okay, I have gone over this before, but the middle sections of each of the motifs, you pretty much need a 20-gram mini. I don't think any of them took exactly 20 grams. It was all a little bit less than 20 grams, but it was probably an average of about 17 to 18 grams for the middle motif for me. And then for the border, or the outside of each motif, I just used a bare yarn. I think that covers everything for this blanket. I'll go ahead and stand up so you can see it in its entirety a bit better. Here we go. There you can see a bit better how big it is. It's a great size for a throw. I am 5'10" and it's just now hanging on the floor, and it comes up to, my chin basically. I will put the measurements on the screen of the exact dimensions of this blanket. But I really love how it turned out. I'm so pleased with it. I think it's just a beauty, and I loved the process of making this so much. It is a great way to use up some beautiful scraps of yarn, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. While I'm standing up, I'll go ahead and show you another blanket that I finished, and if you watched my last episode, you probably won't be surprised because I was pretty close to finishing it on the last episode. And that is the Garden Romance blanket that I've been working on, I think, since May. I'll look at my notes in a minute, but let me just show it to you in its entirety, and then I'll go into more detail about it. And again, I'll put the dimensions on the screen for this one. But it turned out to be a nice sized blanket as well. I'm really happy with how this one turned out too. It's very pretty and perfect for fall, isn't it? I did start this blanket on the very last day of May, May 31st, and I finished it on September 28th. Last time I recorded, I just had about 3 color stripes to add in, I think. I ended up, that was the beginning, this is the end. I think I maybe was on this orange stripe the last time I recorded, so I actually added 4 more color stripes because I decided that I wanted both ends to have that dark burgundy color on the end, so that it starts with the burgundy color and ends with the burgundy as well. This pattern came from a Leisure Arts booklet that I have in my stash called A Year of Afghans Book 5. And the designer for this Afghan is Nair Carswell. Here is a picture of the original. In it, they used 4 colors, and I only used 3. The yarn that I used for this was gifted to me by a viewer of this channel named Mickey, and it was some Caron yarn. I don't know the colorways or the exact makeup or line of Caron, but I think it's probably Caron Simply Soft. It is all 100% acrylic worsted weight yarn. I'm going to be giving this to someone down the line. I don't know when or who it will go to, but I'm just going to keep it in my stash of gifts and have it as a gift sometime down the line. I used up almost all of what I had for this variegated colorway. I only have this little ball left over. I was generously offered to have some more of that colorway sent my way so that I could make the blanket bigger, which was so generous, but I thought that the blanket was already a good size, so I didn't think it was necessary. But a viewer of this channel had some in her stash that she was willing to send to me, so that was so kind of her to offer. But anyway, this was a super fun and enjoyable pattern to work up. Pretty simple. It's just a 1-row repeat, and then you change colors every 2 rows. I used an H 5mm hook for this project. I followed the pattern regarding the number of stitches that I started with, but I only completed 86 rows. I think that the original pattern calls for more. It calls for you to make a total of 98 rows. So mine's not quite as long as the original, but I think it's a good length. I ended up, the pattern also includes an edging stitch. It's not super noticeable because it's pretty thin, but it's just along here. You can see a really thin line of that darker green color. I tried following the instructions for the edging, but it wasn't very clear to me, so I don't know. I've been crocheting for 25 years, and if a pattern isn't very clear to me, then I don't know. I mean, I'm not an expert crocheter. Like, I attempted to crochet a really complicated hat pattern earlier this year, and I was baffled. So I'm not saying I'm an expert, but I mean, you would think that for, like, I don't know, I would just expect that a crocheted border on a blanket would be pretty easy to do for me. And I did not think that the instructions for that edging stitch were very clear. I attempted to do it, but I was like, what? That doesn't make sense for, I don't know. It didn't make sense to me. Maybe I was just misreading it, and maybe if I went back and tried again, I could have figured it out. But I really didn't think it was that necessary because the edge of this blanket is really nice and neat already. So it doesn't really need an edge here. In the original pattern, it also includes tassels, fringe. I always get that mixed up. Anyway, it includes fringe, and I mentioned on my last episode that I wasn't too sure if I should include that or not, and I asked for your all's suggestions or opinions on what you thought about that, and the majority of you thought that the fringe was not necessary, or maybe even it could be quite a hassle to try to care for the fringe, because when you wash a blanket with fringe on it, it can be kind of hard to make it continue to look nice over years. So I was kind of leaning towards not including the fringe anyway, and so then when most of you thought, yeah, the fringe wasn't necessary or not a good idea, then I decided just to leave it off. And I'm really happy with how it turned out. I think it's just a great blanket, beautiful stitch pattern. I just really love the looks of that stitch pattern. I did think that maybe it was quite open, you know, you can't like stick your fingers through the holes and stuff, but my husband has remarked before that it is quite remarkable that crocheted blankets that have quite a lot of holes in them are still very warm, even though they have a lot of holes in them. So I think as I was working on this, you know, as it was getting bigger, it was covering me and keeping me nice and cozy in the early mornings when it was quite chilly still. So I thought it was just great. I was really happy with it. When I first started, I thought, I don't know, this might be a little too open to be a nice blanket, but I think it's great. I think it'll be a great blanket for someone to have sometime down the road. I don't know who or when I will gift this. I don't know who I will give it to, and I don't know when I will gift it, but I'm excited to have it in my stash for when that time comes. So thanks again to Mickey for gifting me this yarn. I really appreciate it, and I'm so happy to have made this blanket. I think that covers that for that finished object. I also finished this pair of mittens, which I'm really excited about. So these were kind of a surprise project for me. I started off making, I think I did that wrong. I go this way. I had that on the wrong hand. It's a little bit hard to tell which hand is which. So I started off making the Cuff Club Volume 2 sock pattern by Summer Lee at the beginning of September. Yes, this is the September chart. And I realized that, well, I didn't realize that in the original pattern, Summer Lee does instruct you to go up in your needle size when you're knitting the cuffs of these socks. And I did not do that. So that was my fault. I didn't read the instructions very well. Anyway, I knit the beautiful cuff, and I think about 50 rounds of the leg of my socks before I tried them on and realized that the cuff is way too tight because cabling really limits the stretch in knitted fabric, and so the cuff was just too tight for me to get that over my high instep. So I tried them on my hands and realized that they fit beautifully for a pair of mittens. So I decided just to turn them into mittens, and I'm so happy with how they turned out. I think they're so cute. I love them a lot. So for these, I cast on the medium size, which is a 64 stitch sock using US 02 millimeter needles. And then after I did the cuff, I reduced my stitches down to 60 stitches, which is what I normally do for my socks, because I thought that would be what I would need to have a good fitting sock. But then once I realized I wanted to turn these into mittens, it worked as well to just keep that 60 stitch for the, I don't know, for this part of the sock, or the mitten, for this part of the mitten, I just kept the 60 stitch count. Then once I got ready, I knit a total of 60 rounds in plain stockinette with 60 stitches on my needles. Then I put 16 stitches onto waste yarn for the thumb separation, and I cast on 8 stitches. So then my stitch count was down to 52 stitches for the upper part of the mitten. Then I continued to knit just plain, just straight until I got to 3 3/4 inches from the thumb separation. And at that time I started doing decreases. I decreased every row until I had 16 stitches on the palm side, and then I decreased on the palm side every other round, and every round on the back side of the mittens, because since I took the thumb stitches off of the palm side of the mitten, I only had 22 stitches on one side of my mitten, and I had 30 stitches on the other side of my mitten. So I needed to kind of even out my decreases by decreasing less on the palm side and more on the back of the hand, if that makes sense. Anyway, once I got these stitches even on both sides, then I continued to decrease every round until I had 8 stitches remaining. And then I just cinched up the end. And I did reference the World's Simplest Mitten pattern by Tin Can Knits as kind of a guide. It didn't match my stitch count or anything, but it kind of helped me to know when to start decreasing and how often to decrease and things like that, and how few stitches I should end up with before I was done, that sort of a thing. So that was helpful. And also with the thumbs as well, but I'll get to that in a minute. Once I finished that, then I realized that I thought that I could just interchange my 2 mittens for some reason. It hadn't occurred to me that I was making 2 right hand mittens. So because my thumb I took off of the palm side, like I said, so I had 2 that were kind of like that. And I needed my other thumb to be on the other side. So I had to rip out the left hand mitten, the decreases on the left hand mitten, and kind of just rearrange my stitches so that the thumb could be positioned right. Because when I put it on, I could do it like this. When I put this mitten onto the left hand, which both of them were like this, then the decreases are going down the center of the glove or the mitten instead of on the edges. Can you see that? So anyway, it wasn't too much trouble. At first I was like, oh no, what do I do? But really it wasn't that hard at all. I just ripped back before the decreases, rearranged my stitches by shifting them over. It worked. It was fine. And then I just did the decreases again, and it worked out great. For the thumb, I picked up 16 stitches from the waste yarn, which I had on hold, and then I picked up an extra 10 stitches for like the other side of the thumb on this edge kind of. And I just knit straight for 1.5 inches, and then Oh, I don't know why I did that. Okay, but this is what I did. I knit for straight for 1.5 inches. I decreased 2 stitches because I think I had a total of 16 plus, I had a total of 26 stitches and I wanted to have only 24 stitches. So I just decreased 2 stitches and then continued to knit straight with only 24 stitches on my needles until the thumb measured 2.5 inches. And then I did 2 rounds of knit 2 together all the way around before I cut my yarn and sewed up the end. So anyway, they worked out really well. I'm so happy to have these in my stash. I just think they're going to be a great mitten to have on hand when the temperatures are like now, are just now starting to get a little cool where your hands can get pretty cold outside pretty quickly, but you don't need a really thick mitten. This thin, it's just made out of fingering weight yarn. I didn't mention that the yarn, both of these colors I dyed myself, and they're fingering weight, 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon. I dyed them up many years ago, so they've been in my stash for a while. But anyway, it's not a super thick, heavy mitten, so it's just nice to have in the autumn. I think it'll be great, both because of the beautiful colors and because it's a thinner mitten, so it'll keep me a little warm, but not like really, really warm. And then, like I mentioned last time, I think they will I think they will work well for layering as I could put these on when it gets really cold and then put a thicker mitten over top of them, and that'll just give me an extra layer of warmth when it does really cool down. So I think it'll be useful for that as well. I started these on September 1st and finished them on October 1st, so exactly a month. I'm really, really pleased that I was able to use my mistake in making those cuffs too tight and turn these into something really useful that, you know, I really can use these mittens, and I don't need any more socks in my stash. I have 2 boxes completely full of socks. No, 3 boxes, because I have a separate box just for my Christmas socks. And so anyway, I don't need any more socks, but I can definitely use some mittens, and I just don't make them as often. But I can see making some more of these fingering weight mittens, and you could just follow the World's Simplest Mittens patterns, because they do have instructions for using fingering weight yarn to make mittens in their free pattern. So I recommend that if you're interested in making some mittens out of fingering weight yarn. Anyway, so happy with that finished object. I also finished this modified classic ribbed hat that I had been working on. I started this on August 30th and finished it on October 6th. This is a free pattern on the Purl Soho website. It was designed by Jake Canton, but I modified it quite a bit. I cast on the adult small size using US 3.25 millimeter needles, and I changed the 1x1 ribbing to 2x2 ribbing, and only knit that for 4 inches before I went into plain stockinette stitch, because I had a bunch of little scraps that I wanted to use up, and I thought it would be easier just to stripe those in with stockinette stitch rather than having ribbing. I guess I don't remember why I decided to go from 1x1 ribbing to 2x2 ribbing, probably just to change it up. I can't really remember why I thought that would be a great idea. In hindsight, I kind of wish I wouldn't have done the 2x2, because I think my 2x2 ribbing looks kind of sloppy. Maybe my 1x1 ribbing is just as sloppy, but for some reason I just think that the ribbing on this hat looks a little it's not very even, I don't think, but it's okay. All of this yarn is DK weight, 100% acrylic yarn, pretty much. There's some tiny little scraps there that have some Tweedy bits in them, so I'm not sure what the makeup of that is exactly, but for the most part, DK weight, 100% acrylic yarns. This turned out to be quite large. I did knit it longer than what the original pattern calls for the adult small size. As I normally do when I make this pattern, I knit to a 9.5 inch length before I did the decreases. And it's kind of got a fun spirally decrease section for the crown. But this turned out pretty large, which is good because, again, this will just go into my gift basket. And, you know, some people have larger heads, or if I assume this will go to a woman, And, you know, sometimes women, if they have curly hair or something like that, they don't want to have a really tight fitting hat. They want something that's looser. And this one definitely is looser. So it has a lot of extra space here. But I think it looks really cute with the brim. And I can make it a lot, you know, use up that 4 inches of brim that I made to make it a bit tighter. Or you can wear it really slouchy and just leave the brim unfolded like that. So I think it's you can just really tell though it's pretty big on my head. My head is not huge. So anyway, I'm happy to have a bit of a larger fitting hat in my gift basket. So, and I was super happy to use up all of those scraps. I think it's cute how I striped those in. I think it looks cute. Once I finished this hat, I started another one of these classic ribbed hats, which I'll show in a minute. But I also, and I'm just making that one out of one neutral color that I have left over of this yarn. So this yarn is most recently, it's left over from a lot of different projects, but most recently I crocheted a little girl blanket. And a lot of these are leftovers from that project. And I still have a neutral color left over from that project too that I am making another classic ribbed hat in. But I still had 3 little balls of some of these scraps. Well, I guess just this colorway here, which is a Yarn Bee yarn, but that's all I can remember about it. And then I had 2 other little balls that I did not end up putting into this hat at all. And I wanted to use those up and make some more scrunchies, which I haven't done in a while, but I have done several of these scrunchies in the past. And this is another free pattern called the 20-minute scrunchie by Haute KIPPY by Bethany Sypolt. And they're called the 20-minute scrunchie. They are at the most 20 minutes. I think I did time myself a while ago, and I remember I could make one up in less than 20 minutes. So they're just so extremely fast and easy. So I had this dark olive colorway, and the color that I used on the crown of that hat, which is white with pink, teal, and purple speckles in it. It's kind of hard to see with the sun shining in, but you can kind of get an idea of that one. And then this color, this one I know is Deramores Studio Anti-Pilling DK in the olive colorway. And then this one is Knit Picks Brava in the Tranquil colorway. So again, these are all acrylic yarn and all DK weight. So the instructions for this pattern call for you to do half double crochet around a, rubber band, or not a rubber band, but a stretchy hair tie thing. And you just make enough half double crochet stitches, US terms again, to cover the hair tie. And then you do a second round where you're doing 4 double crochet stitches into each stitch from the previous round. So it's super simple. I used a 4mm hook. Each of them took between 7 and 8 grams of yarn. And I made all 3 of these on October 6th. And I'm really happy with them. I think I'll keep this one for myself, and probably my daughter will take at least one of these. Maybe I'll keep another one for a gift down the road. I'm not sure. I'll ask my daughter if she already has a lot of them, but you never can have too many. So anyway, I will see about that. So those are all of my finished objects, and I'll go on into my works in progress now. Like I mentioned, I started another classic ribbed hat. It's being held in my new crossbody purse that I keep with me at all times, and it's always great to have. Lately I've just been carrying around a hat project in this bag, which works so well because I can just knit right from the bag while I'm wearing it, and I really love that. So I did start this classic ribbed hat, again free pattern designed by Canton for Purl Soho, and I really should put some needle stoppers on this because I oftentimes pull my stitches off, which I have done again. So let me pick these up really quickly. And I've dropped a few stitches. I mean, like it's laddered down on a few of them, but I'll fix that later. Anyway, even though that one that I just shared with you turned out rather large, I still did the adult small size because this one I am following the pattern by doing the 1x1 ribbing rather than doing 2x2, and I'm planning on doing one. I'm just following the pattern for this one, so I'm going to do the 1x1 ribbing throughout, and so I think that'll cinch up the gauge a lot and help it to be a not such a huge fitting hat. And even if it is, like I said, it's kind of nice to have a larger fitting hat for people that have larger heads, of course. But I did cast on the adult small size again, and again I'm using US 3.25 millimeter needles. I started this on October 6th, and this is Deramores Studio Anti-Pilling DK in the powder colorway. Again, 100% acrylic yarn. So I have plenty of this colorway to just make the hat in this nice neutral color. So that's an easy project to have on the go. On to a few projects that you've already seen in previous episodes if you've watched before. This is a pair of socks that I am holding in this cute bag that was gifted to me by a viewer of this channel named Nicole. And it is a bag that is sewn by Stitchin' You Bags. And I am very slowly working on the Fairgrounds socks, a beautiful pattern by K.F. Jones of the Bakery Bears. And these socks are taking me forever. I'm not sure why, but maybe it's because it's a patterned sock. So it's kind of like, I feel like socks are a traveling project, a project I like to take on the go, but yet these are a patterned sock. And so they're not completely mindless. I do have to kind of keep track. Every fourth row, there's a stitch pattern that you have to follow. So I can't just do that without looking. So they kind of fall into a category of my knitting where when I'm home and can really concentrate on what I'm working on, I don't tend to pick these up because they're just socks, and I think of socks as a travel project. But then when I'm traveling, I don't often work on these either because I do have to pay attention a little bit when I'm working on them. So anyway, you'll see I haven't made a ton of progress. This is a beautiful stitch marker that my cousin Allie made for me a few years ago. It's so sweet. And that's marking where I was last time. So I've only done like one color stripe repeat, which is just a 3-color stripe repeat on these. But the pattern is so beautiful, and it really is quite simple to do and easy to memorize, but I don't know. I just haven't worked on them very much. The cuff is 1x1 ribbing, and I just did that until I had completed 3 color stripes, which I think was 19 rounds. And then I like my socks to be quite long in the leg. So I am on a purple stripe right now, and when I finish that purple stripe, then I'm planning on starting the heels. And that will get me a little over 70 rounds in the leg. So a total of about 90 rounds for the leg, including the cuff. I've mentioned before that I kind of have a stitch marker system going on here where I'm keeping track of the 3 plain rows, and right now I'm on one of the patterned rows. So then I put the silver ring onto the needles, and it just kind of helps me keep track of what row I'm on in the pattern. I have decided for my heels, the yarn I'm using, I should mention, is Knit Picks Felici in the Sanderson colorway, which is fingering weight, 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon, and I'm using US 0.2 millimeter needles, and I cast on the medium size, which is 64 stitches. For the heels, I've decided to use Stroll Tweed fingering in the Wellies Heather colorway, which is 65% fine superwash merino wool, 25% nylon, and 10% Donegal tweed. And I think that that will look great for the heels. So like I mentioned, I'm almost ready to start the heels after the yarn switches back to the orange color. Then I'll start the heels at that point. And I'm just going to do a slip stitch heel flap for my heels because that's the sock or the heel pattern that fits my foot the best. Again, I have a really high instep, and so that heel is just the best for me. The other work in progress that you have seen before in previous episodes, if you watched, is being held in this bag that I sewed myself. And it is my stripe hype sweater, which I haven't made very much progress on this, mainly because I'm just kind of at a standstill in my decision-making process on what I want to do for the sleeves. So I asked for suggestions on my last episode on what you thought I should do for the color placement for the sleeves. And I got a few great suggestions, and I really appreciate that. But I don't know if I mentioned that I really don't have a lot of the main color left. I have 120 grams left and I have to do both sleeves and the neck collar, or the neck ribbing. And I'm a little bit nervous if that's enough yarn to follow the pattern. But I'll just start from where I left off last time. So last time I recorded, I was on the ribbing of the body already, and I did shorten the ribbing from what the original pattern called for. I only knit 3 inches of ribbing, and the original pattern calls for 4 inches of ribbing. And then it also calls for, I believe, a sewn tubular bind off, which I started doing, and I usually love that. But since I didn't mention, but the ribbing is half twisted ribbing, and since it is twisted ribbing, I wasn't sure if the sewn bind off should also twist the knit stitches or not. No, I guess, yeah, it does recommend an Italian bind off method or your preferred stretchy bind off method. Anyway, I started doing the Italian bind off method, and I was twisting my knit stitches to keep with the pattern, but I thought it looked really sloppy. I only did like a couple of inches, but I just didn't think it looked very neat. And so what I decided to do for the main body of this garment, I used the recommended needle size, which is US 6 4mm needles. And then for the ribbing, you go down a whole millimeter size to a US 3. You're recommended to go down to 3mm needles. And last time I recorded, I thought I was using 3mm needles, but I wasn't. I accidentally grabbed US 3.25mm needles. So that was an accidental modification that I made, but I don't think that matters too much. Anyway, when I did my bind off, I just bound off in pattern like a regular bind off, but I used the US 6 needles. So I went up to the US 6 4mm needles. So it was a bit of a, stretchier bind off. I saw a loop down here at the bottom that looked like something was wrong, that it was just a loose stitch that I could fix easily by, stretching the stitches a little bit. Anyway, so this beautiful Progress Keeper was stitched by Erica of the Rose Opal Knits podcast, and they were actually the ladies that inspired me to start this project, because they both started this garment on August 15th, and I did too. That's when I started this project. So it's taking me a long time to make because I keep stalling on it for different reasons. Anyway, I'm really happy with how the body is fitting so far. I am knitting the medium size. I guess I could slip this on, I don't know, over top of this other sweater. It's oversized a little bit, so maybe it'll work. So you can get an idea of what it looks like, kind of. So it comes down pretty far, like way past my belly button, like probably at least 6 inches past my belly button. So it's a nice longer length. I don't know if you can tell. And it's all superwash yarn. This yarn was also gifted to me by a viewer of this channel named Rachel. And it's all Goosey Fibers, Goosey Swish, which is DK weight, 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon. And so I think it will probably stretch when I lock it as well. So it'll get even more oversized at that point. Okay, but my dilemma is with my yarn. So for the sleeves, I should continue to follow the striping pattern in that you should use the main color every other color stripe. you know. My main color is called Cotton-Headed Ninny-Muggins. This is all a faded kit that was put together by Goosey Fibers to make the Comfort Fade Cardi by Andrea Mowry. And it's all Polar Express themed yarn. So the main color I had 3 skeins of, and it's called Cotton-Headed Ninny-Muggins. The pink is called Figgy Pudding. The gray toned colorway is called Son of a Nutcracker, and then the bluish color is called Polar Express. And so the sleeves originally call for you to use 2 new colorways on your sleeves, so you have a total of 5 contrast colors. I only have these 3 contrast colors, but I have plenty of those colors because I originally had 2 skeins of each of these contrast colors, and the original pattern you only need 1 skein and you don't even use a full skein. But I should have had at least 4 skeins of the main color, and I only have 3. And like I mentioned, I think already, I only have 120 grams left to do the 2 sleeves and the neck ribbing, and I'm nervous that that's not enough. So I haven't started the sleeves because I just can't quite decide what I should do. I don't want to, you know, make it halfway down the sleeve and then realize that the patterning that I'm following is not going to work out and I'm going to have to change up what I'm doing. So my thought right now, I think what I'm leaning towards, and let me know what you think, is to change the color striping on the sleeves. What I'm thinking of doing is starting with the main color and then doing the 3 contrast colors right after each other. So then do pink, gray, blue, and repeat that color stripe. So on the sleeves, I would have, you know, these wide of stripes, but my patterning for the color stripes will go main color, pink, gray, blue, and repeat those 4 stripes. What do you think about that? Do you think that'll look good? Do you think that'll look weird? I'm not sure. I mean, in the original pattern, the sleeves don't match the main body. They have different colors, and so mine won't match either, but I will still follow this sequence of pink, gray, blue. I don't know. I'm just not sure if it will look. And also the other thing I thought of is that gray is quite a neutral colorway, and so my sleeves will go neutral pink, neutral blue, and follow that pattern. Or I could do like the main color pink or blue at the top of the sleeve, gray, pink, and repeat that stripe, you know, doing like that. And then for the other half of the sleeve, I could introduce the second contrast color. Does that make sense? So since the pink and the blue are more, they stand out more, I could kind of use that gray color as a background color for every other stripe, every other neutral stripe. But the other thing I thought of in doing my original plan with the background color pink, gray, blue, and repeating that, is that then I could make the sleeves as long as I want to. And I'm a bit nervous about the sleeves not being long enough. So the original pattern calls for the sleeves to have, in each color block section, you have 3 stripes of the contrast color. And you're supposed to have 2 of those color blocked sections in the sleeves before you do the ribbing. Like I mentioned, I'm quite tall. I'm 5'10", and so my arms are long. And so I think I'm probably going to need to knit my sleeves longer than what the pattern calls for because I need more length in my sleeves. And if I followed the pattern, then I might get done with those 2 color block sections and be, you know, way up here on my arm yet. And then what? Just knit a super long ribbing? That would look a little odd maybe. So if I followed this 4 stripe pattern repeat that I'm thinking of, then I could really make the sleeves as long as I needed to. So that might be good. Anyway, I've got too many thoughts on this, haven't I? But that's why I've not started the sleeves, because I'm not really sure what to do. So thank you for the suggestions, but I don't know. Or do you think 120 grams is enough to follow the pattern? I just don't know. I'm a little stuck on what to do. So I need more suggestions, I guess. Any other suggestions or thoughts on what you think I should do on this? I would really appreciate it because I just don't quite know what to do. Anyway, I think I covered enough on that one. I have 2 new works in progress that I've started since I recorded last. The first, I had so many little leftovers from after I finished the Florentines blanket, and just beautiful colorways, but not a lot of each of them. And I wanted to make something special using up all of these little beautiful scraps that I had left over from the Florentines blanket. And I decided to start a granny stripe shawl, which is a design by Moan of Crochet Objet. I think that's how you pronounce it. And I have really enjoyed watching her vlogs over the last few months, several months, and this is one of her designs. So it is crocheted using up fingering weight scraps, and I am really enjoying making it. I started this on October 4th, and I'm using a 2.75 millimeter hook. The original pattern calls for you to use a 3 millimeter hook, but I don't think I have one of those. I have 2.75 or 3.25, and maybe it's just a 3.5 is the next size up. Anyway, I thought probably it was a 3.5 because I remember thinking that the 2.75 was the closest to the original recommendation. So that's what I went with. She does include some shaping in the first few rows so that it fits over the shoulders really well. It kind of hugs your body in the way that it's shaped. And I haven't checked my gauge, but maybe mine is turning out a bit tighter because of my 2.75 millimeter hook. I'm not sure. But I'm really enjoying the process of making this. I change color I've been changing color every row and just using up tons of little scraps. So a lot of these scraps are leftovers from the Florentines blanket, but then I also have introduced several more colors as well because I wanted to change colors every row, and the original pattern calls for you to do I think almost 50 different rows of colors. You don't have to change color every row, but that's what I've done, and I didn't have that many different colorways left over from my Florentines blanket. So anyway, I've introduced some more colors into this fun scrappy project. And anyway, it's going really well and I'm enjoying it. I think I will, it does fit over the shoulders nicely, like I mentioned, because of the shaping, but I will probably wear it more like a scarf, I'm thinking, and I think it'll be so fun to have this bright pop of color. And then it also has a fun scalloped edge that I'll add in at the end. So this has been really fun to have on the go. I've just been working on this at home, but it's been a really fun project to work on. And then my last work in progress is just another pair of socks, and I have them in a Christmassy bag that I sewed myself because it is some Christmas yarn that I am knitting up. This is Stylecraft Head Over Heels yarn. It is fingering weight, 73% superwash wool, 25% nylon, and 2% polyester, which is this beautiful gold sparkly thread. I cast on 60 stitches. Oh, and this is in the colorway Comet. I cast on 60 stitches using US 2, US 0, 2 millimeter needles. And I did 2 by 1, so knit 2, purl 1 ribbing. And I did it for quite a long, I just started or stopped doing the ribbing. So I think it's about 30 rows or rounds of that 2 by 1 ribbing. I just wanted to complete all of this section because now the yarn, as you can see here, is changing to red, and I thought it'd be kind of cool to have this green and white section for the cuff and then change to plain stockinette for the rest of the leg once it switched to the red color. So anyway, now these are super mindless and easy to take on the go as a easy travel project. So this is what I typically think of when I think of socks, is just a super mindless project, and that's what these will be now. I started these on October 1st, and yeah, they'll just be super simple to have on the go. So those are all of my works in progress. I hope that you enjoyed seeing the things that I've been working on, and I hope that you're really enjoying the things that you're working on as well. Thank you so much for joining me today. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.